Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, we've got those two gentlemen joining us here today. Dr. Nuruddin Zauro is a technical advisor to the president on financial inclusion. And sitting right beside him is Michael Ilesom, who is the country lead Nigeria for Women Project World Bank Group. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for coming on today. So,
Thank you so much. Good morning.
This making financial services affordable to all Nigerians at affordable costs. That's why this event held last week, which both of you played key role, an agreement signing between the federal government, states, and some of the other stakeholders. So financial inclusion. So what is this? Break it down for us, because when people hear financial inclusion, different things come to mind. What is this about?
Okay, thank you so much, Chamberlain. Thank you so much for this. Okay, financial inclusion actually is talking about access to formal financial services, at an affordable rate. Particularly emphasis on the the last mile, the poor and vulnerable people in the country. So when we talk about financial inclusion, we are also, we are referring to a situation whereby those kind of blocks at the last mile, at the bottom of the pyramid, have access, and they are also formally onboarded into the formal financial sector. So majorly, if you look at it, where the emphasis is about the access itself, as well as the usage, and then the quality of the kind of services they should also do. Then the comfort, of course, in terms of access and proximity to be able to access those kind of services. So basically, that's what we're talking about in that regard.
We'll still talk about all of those at maybe step by step. But Mr. Listen, what does this? You the country lead for the women group here. So how is your team playing out with this?
All right, thank you very much, Chamberlain and Maupe, for having me on your program. Yes, what are we doing? I think through the Nigeria for Women program, which is the flagship women's economic empowerment operation of the government, the World Bank is providing financial and technical resources to the government to try and address some of these challenges through access to finance and access to markets for poor and vulnerable women across the country. And so mainly that's what we're doing. But to make this possible, there are a lot of building blocks that needs to be addressed. And one of them is, I think for us, we needed to understand what are the constraints to women's financial inclusion, women's economic empowerment in this country. And there are mainly four barriers. The first is access to finance. The second is information asymmetry. The third is social norms that prevent women and girls from achieving their full potentials. And the fourth is access to markets. And so these are the issues that the program Nigeria for Women is seeking to address. And Nigeria for Women is a portfolio of programs, about $654 million.
So wait, which one of those factors you highlight is topmost in terms of the huge impediment? Or do you look at it differently?
So they're mutually reinforcing.
Oh.
So access to finance, for instance, if women have access to finance.
No, I mean the impediments.
Yes, I think I know social norms. Yes, I would. I think they all affect women in different ways.
Yeah, I was going to say break it down, because the language you're using are the language that experts will understand. For instance, information asymmetry. What does that mean?
So no, thanks. And I'll try to unbundle some of these terms. I'll give you let's start with access to markets. Too many times men and women have different access, to market and market opportunities. So take, for instance, the kind of the demographic we're dealing with. Many of them are small-scale, smallholder, farmers. And when they, whether they're in production, producing, growing food, or in processing, often their ability to, take these produce to the market tends to be, they often don't have that opportunity. And even when they do, that access is often mediated by men. And so what happens is the women do all of the work, but then middlemen come and do all of the aggregation and take all of the profit. And so that is one challenge. The second is access.
I'm sorry, is that a gender thing or is it a skill set challenge?
Gender plays a huge role.
Okay.
Yes. And then the other is access to finance. So if you look at the kind of products that are available in the market, whether they are savings or credit products, they tend not to speak to the needs of these women. So, for instance, many of these women, even though they are working in some economic spaces, don't have the credit history that is required for banks to provide them, with loans. But that doesn't mean they're not credit worthy. But because that formal, credit history is not there, what then happens is, the banks and financial service providers are not able to make credit available to them.
That happens to everybody. Every gender. No, it's not just women.
No, it's worse with women, and I'll tell you why. Now, if you look at, on the program we supporting that the government is implementing, over the women have been able to save close to 5 billion naira of their own resources in the last 2.5 years. And at any point in time, 70% of that amount has gone to them in credit by themselves. Now, what we've seen is that the repayment rate is over 97, 98%. But the challenge is they're doing all of these transactions in cash, and it's not digitized. As such, they are unable to use this savings and credit, informal savings and credit history. And what then happens is, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the term Bomuli lantern. That is a term that I, myself recently came across, which is the way women describe some of the, informal credit they're able to get, which, translated to English means breast on a lantern. And that describes how painful, these kind of, is.
Well, maybe I'll come to that part because I stand corrected. Is this perhaps might also speak to what we've heard over time, wherein government keeps trying to get those in the informal sector, formalize all of those things. And some of the questions that occur to a lot of people is, look, it's one thing to try that, as good as the policy and intentions may be, but if you ask people to go put money in the banks, and the challenges are there, and they are billing them with every couple, people, they relate and they feel, no, if this bank is going to charge me this, there's no way I'm going there. So that's a different matter entirely. So hopefully we'll come to that. But are you considering that?
Chamberlain, that is one of the big issues.
Okay.
Because the way, and I think we need to interrogate some of the products that are in the market. But what are some of these barriers? First, you want to formalize, get people access to formal, but the banks are not, near them. That's a challenge. The kind of, there's no adequate consumer protection for these women. The kind of hoops they have to, jump, to open an account. And you need a NIN, you need a BVN. Some of these women don't even have any ID at all. And so how do we simplify this, taking into cognizance the peculiarities of the women we're trying to target? Also, does this come at a cost? You talked about the cost. All of these are costs that can disincentivize women. And so how can we leverage technology? How can we develop products that recognizes the peculiar challenges of these women? And how do we, make sure that the bank, the financial product is in a language that they understand?
I think that's what Dr. Zaro might also comment.
I was just about to ask him because I'm listening to everything that you've said, and I'm saying, okay, so while that is very important, because I imagine that a government will want all of its people to be within a formal financial system. They want to be able to take note of how many people, who is doing what, how much is actually going through the systems, which in some ways also, should engender accountability. A country should be able to say how much money is actually in its systems, not, I think right now we have estimates of how much is actually outside of the financial, the formal financial system. But then when you also look at the many advantages which Mr. Elisomi is enumerating, and the many challenges as well, and you look at even those within the formal financial system,
they want to get out.
Exactly, unable to get access to a lot of the things that government wishes that they will be able to get access to. Has the formal financial system marketed itself to those who are outside the system?
Anyway, thank you so much, Mark. Okay, as part of the consideration for issues happening around in terms of challenges, as you have rightly highlighted them, that this access to financial inclusion, both economic and financial inclusion, are very, important priority, in the renewed hope of agenda of Mr. President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. It is in that light that we invited the people who are technocrats in that industry, so that they can come and brainstorm and, of course, advise us on the best way we can do. All this while, right from 2012, when the implementation of national financial inclusion started, which the first strategy was issued, the implementation of financial inclusion strategy, rests with Central Bank of Nigeria. Of course, other agencies, both public and private sector, are doing a lot of efforts to ensure that this question you asked in terms of access to financial services is actually easing out, and of course makes available to all the Nigerians, especially the vulnerable people, which is the consideration now. So in the light of that, we feel that now I think it is time for us to invite stakeholders to come up with that. But one of the things here is that how can we be able to streamline both the economic aspect of it, which streamlines, talk about some of those G2P payments and other social interventions kind of things that we're doing, and then again the monetary aspect of it, whereby the regulated entities that provide all services. There are other agencies also that provide some of efforts that impact into the pool. That's enhancing access to financial services. Example of such is, of course, what Nigeria for Women initiative. There are other agencies that are doing a lot. So in consideration of the importance of this sector, and that's why we feel that there's a need for us to now come together. And one of the key issues take away from that workshop that you would see, in fact, top on the list, is actually signing of the accord. What does that mean? The signing of the accord is saying that the entire block stakeholders in this industry are saying that we are committed, and of course we have agreed that as part of our own contribution, we are committed, to supporting the government, of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the implementation.
Who are the stakeholders?
These stakeholders includes from the presidency side, we have the vice president was the signatory to that effect. And then again, we have Central Bank Governor also, which also is a signatory to that accord. And we also have Honorable Minister of Finance. We also have subnationals. That is the 36 states, governors of 36 states of the Federation, of course, represented by the governor, the chairman of Nigerian Governors Forum, was also there, to sign to the accord. Then, because of the, impact, that is the economic solution to Nigerian security challenges and all that, because you know that if everybody is gainfully employed and he's doing some economic activities, of course, he does not have time for all these kind of security issues. So National Security Advisor was also there, to commit to this journey. As well as the private sector also were there.
The private sector I'm interested in. So who were the people in the private sector that were there?
Sorry, we have the managing director of Sterling Bank. He was also there. We have the issue here is that everybody cannot be a signatory to the accord.
Was he representing the banks?
He was representing the private sector. Do you understand? You will argue with me that of course there are quite a lot of other blocks, of course, now, but at least that one is a sign of commitment. And at the end of the day, now that we have concluded this workshop, and where the accord was signed, we plan to go, to cascade it down to the regions as well as to
what exactly
77 local governments in the country.
What exactly do you require of the governors?
Of the governors?
Yeah.
Implementation.
How?
Because they play a very, very important role. They are at the subnational level. Currently, we have what we call as a Fiscal Financial Inclusion State Steering Committee. It's also an array of stakeholders at the state level to ensure that whatever initiative is brought, they ensure that it gets to the last mile, including local government, including all of that. What we're trying to do here is that how can we now review the existing implementation structure? How can we make it better? Why is this so? It is because this is the government that considers such economic block as a very important priority segment, in the renewed hope agenda. Basically, that's what we're trying to do. And coincidentally, one thing that also surprises you, virtually the same day, Mr. President was also having a meeting with Queen Maxima of Netherlands, which, she's a United Nations global advocate for financial inclusion. So a lot of effort has been put forth in place so that we can see how all the stakeholders now streamline and, of course, come together, so that they can align. Their isolated effort, should actually be avoided. When we come together, I'm sure we can be a very big and stronger team so that we can be able to impact, on the last mile in the country. So that's why the other initiatives that Mr. Michael is talking about, Nigeria for Women initiative, there are a whole lot of them that everybody can come and explain to you. But for us, at the policy level, there's a need for us to have policy and, of course, regulatory reforms to ensure that we now provide an enabling environment, which is, of course, the major role among our role as a government. In fact, the creation of the office called Office of the Technical Advisor to the President on Financial Inclusion in the presidency, I think is a starting point. Do you get? So we are working on tirelessly to ensure that all those loopholes have been blocked, and then we now bring it into the formal sector. You guys have a very important role to play. And then again, even the other program that was held just some days back that talks about savings group, which has to do with last mile. You two were there, I was there as well. So you realize that the kind of role, recognizing the role they play, because they are not regulated entities. Esusu, Ajo, and all that you're talking about.
You want to stop them?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that their effort needs to be recognized. Do you understand? So that you can see how you can encourage those kind of efforts. Do you understand?
Okay, not
so
to bring them into the formal.
No. What we are saying is to encourage them, but to recognize the effort they are making, so that we can see what contribution they are making to the center at the point, and that's exactly what we are talking about. Thank you.
Well, I don't think I even that
be cautious about that. Don't touch my money.
No.
There have been, this is very interesting because it just so happens that even the people in the formal financial system still do the Esusu and still do the Ajo, as the case is, which goes to say that there is a lot that the formal financial system is still not catering to.
But it is our duty to ensure that they are protected and they are safe. Their contributions and all that, they are safe. You understand? So we're just trying to have visibility and all that.
Certainly, but I'm just saying, because only recently that the federal government launched, is it a credit scheme for workers? That's only going to be for workers, which is one of the things that a formal financial system should be ensuring that workers are able to, people who have been able to show a guaranteed source of income over time should have access to credit. But very few banks, if at all, are actually implementing that for their customers. So one needs to ask, what exactly is the incentive within the formal financial system if a lot of people are still finding their way, outside or around the informal sector to be able to get access to the things that they need. Michael, do you want to speak to that?
So I think, any effort at developing a robust credit system must, we can't divorce that from identity. Because one of the biggest challenges, with credit is, if you get a credit, if you're to be offered credit today, how do we know that,
database?
We're talking, it's Malware who lives here and who has all of these details, and if and she has the ability to repay, because so all of this, we can't. It's important that we're able to link to a robust ID system, and I think that's what the NIMSI is doing, as well as the through the Nigerian ID4D program, amongst other initiatives. And so all of this would help to build an ecosystem. But one thing I need to put out there is, as we push for credit, I think the question is, credit for what? Okay, it's important that, it's productive credit that people can then use to improve their livelihoods and be able to repay. Otherwise, what will happen is, people then get sucked into unsustainable debt. And I think that that is where we need to ensure that, efforts to improve, credit, access to credit is also matched by the work around improving, livelihoods and productivity of the people.
Dr. Zara spoke a moment ago about savings groups. There was a whole conversation around that and how they can serve as a proper linkage to formal financial systems. How local populations have been able to use the savings groups as a way of, creating their own financial system, if you like, and how that can serve as a link to the formal financial system. The question will be, what exactly is the advantage? Why is government really particular about having everybody within the formal financial system?
So, I'll tell you what. You mentioned the savings groups, and I think it might be helpful for the audience to know what we're talking about when we mean savings groups. In the context which you used it, these are groups of people who come together on their own between 15 and 25 and save on a regular basis, most likely on a weekly basis, and then use their savings to provide internal lending to members. What that does is it helps many of these people to address some of the demand side barriers to financial inclusion.
And it's different from cooperatives.
Yes, the savings groups in itself, they're different from cooperatives. A higher order of the savings groups could be a financial cooperative. But what that does is, and if you look, what are the demand side barriers? One is, lack of savings, financial literacy, and things like that. So, as part of these groups, these members get access to financial literacy, for instance, and we have several of them under the Nigeria for Women program. They get access to financial literacy, they get access to education around business skills, and then they are able to, as they save and take loans from their own groups, they're able to build a history of savings and credit, such that if and when it's time to link them to the formal financial services, such history, the transaction history they've created in that group, can then be digitized and made available. Now, what this does is it helps to pretty much aggregate some of these demands, and somewhere down the line we can link them to supply side.
Well, winding down now, Dr. Zaro, could you just speak to this bit? I mean, is it out of place? Why is government, or if they are, you could tell us, because there are those who will think, shouldn't they also be focusing largely on ensuring that the formal sectors, those who are in that system, they're satisfied, I mean, to a large extent, at least, because if people are in the formal sector and you want to bring them in, they'll look to those who are there saying, look at all that, is that where I'm supposed to come in and join? In addition to the question of the database, could you talk to that?
Well, okay, in terms of those who are already there, yeah, you see, it's part of the effort actually to ensure that those who are there, they are actually using the financial services adequately. It's actually one of the efforts, so that's sustainable finance itself.
I know that the CBN formula at the time, they couldn't get the DMBs to carry out the intervention projects. CBN had to be the one coming up with all of those, even though this time around, this CBN says, no, we won't do that anymore.
Well, anyway, that I cannot speak to that. Central Bank can be able to see what is the intent in that. But then the issue here is that as far as the government is concerned, we are more concerned about, first of all, bringing those from those that are currently not using the service and they need it. Because most of the people, they are vulnerable, and women and all that. When they come in, you're already into the financial sector, then the platform is already there. You understand? And there's a market, that you can easily get there and, of course, access financial services in that regard. And again, most of these, like social intervention program we're doing, which is the effort of government to ensure that we ensure that the poor and vulnerable people are there. And again, one of the key issues that Mr. President have been talking about, is all about all these consumer credits, and a lot of efforts have been put in place, which So just to be sure that under this administration, we are determined to ensure that Nigerians, especially the last mile, youth, women, and all that, they get access to formal financial services.
We will still have
they can be better in their lives.
Further conversation on this matter, because we're completely out of time. Because part of what we're going to ask is why is the World Bank just so interested in this to ensure that you bring everybody into this? But there are several conspiracy theories, which I guess we'll have time to see how much of this we could talk about, because people, when they hear, they need to understand. So at the end of the day, if I don't have access to that service, what am I living here with? How easy or difficult is it for me to do that? That's the average person out there. But this is how far we can go. Is that going to be in a few seconds?
Yes. I think why is this important? We need to recognize that financial inclusion is the foundation of women's empowerment.
Yeah,
and I think once we recognize that, it's easy to understand why.
We recognize that, but it's just that, the informal sector has saved this country when the other sectors collapsed. At least that they kept on saying, wow, we don't, if not for certain things, who knows where it would have been. But I get the points. And we thank both of you for coming on. Dr. Nuruddin Zoro, who is a technical advisor to the president on financial inclusion, as well as Michael Ilesomi, country lead for Nigeria, country lead Nigeria for Women Project.
Yes.
Nigeria not been for women before.
It's actually making Nigeria work even better for women.
Okay. Thank you to both of you.